Why problem make when you no problem have you don't want to make?
I'm in Max. You are listening to Pursuing the RPG Hobby with Reckless Abandon.
Why, hello, and welcome to Season 27, Episode 4 of Happy Jacks RPG Podcast. My name is Stu.
This is Tappy.
I'm Chris.
And this is Mo.
Well, hello, gentlemen. How have you been?
Good.
Not too
Been a
shabby.
long week.
It has been a long week.
It's been a long 4 or 5 months, actually.
I'm better now. Thank you.
I have big news. As I've mentioned on the show previously a few times that I was writing or had almost completed a novel, and it has been finished. And it is now available right now on Amazon for your Kindle. And now there's two versions of it. There's the version when I decided not to do a 5th proofreading pass. And that has this sort of like yellowish, goldish cover. And you can't buy it, but it still shows up. And then there's another one that has a cover with a rock. The cover with the rock. It has a rock. It wasn't a rock.
Dwayne
But that one went through that 5th, turns out very critical proofreading pass, which is why the earlier version is no longer available for sale. So, and then the print-on-demand paperback will probably be available maybe tomorrow or Sunday, possibly as late as Monday. So, if you would like to read the book I wrote, it is about...
What is the title?
It is called Mandite Chronicles #1, because I decided to number them so everyone would know which one, because I've already started on the second one. The Apprentice. And it is based in Eldamy, but it's a slightly modified version of Eldamy, if you're familiar with the actual play, D&D actual play I did. And the character in it, I don't think that is an NPC I made for the original D&D game. I think Tappy was in as well. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Were you? I think you were.
Yeah.
His name was Mandite, and he was this sort of a affable necromancer.
Mm-hmm.
But he's one of my favorite NPCs. So I decided to write the story about how he became the guy he was when the party met him. So I don't know how many books it'll be, but the first one.
Necromancer who likes alive people.
Yeah, he does. He's a nice. He's not that nice. He's kind of a nice guy. So, someone read an early version of it and said, "I liked the character until he did this one thing, and he was almost remorseless about it, and I hated him for the rest of the book." So I went through and I said, "Yeah, that was pretty harsh." So I went back and sort of forced him to kind of discover. And the second book is about the repercussions of that event. So I think that might
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I have to say, it is really, really difficult to not only complete a novel, but put it out there for other people to actually read. And,
Oh, it's
awesome.
It was definitely one of those things where it's like, if I don't put this out now, I'm never going to put it out. And then I went, oh no, I should proofread it one more time. So I did. So I left it up, but I didn't say anything to anyone. So no one bought it except me, because I bought a copy of it and I pushed it to my kids' Kindles and said, if you guys want to read it, you can go ahead and read it. And then I went through and I proofread it one more time backwards, a paragraph at a time, so you're not getting context, you're just actually reading the words. And I found easily 100 typos.
Wow.
So
I've never done it that way. I will from now on. Thank you.
I used to be a proofreader. That's what I did when I worked at McDonnell Douglas. And it was extremely tedious work, and I hated it. But I did get pretty good at it. The problem is it's really hard to proofread your own stuff.
It is.
Because you're too familiar
Because you're
with
like,
it.
oh, I know what this says, and then you skim over it and move on.
Yeah, and you'll have a wrong word or not misspelled words. It's hard to misspell words anymore because of all the tools that are out there. But wrong words or something screwy like that, it's really easy to gloss over it, especially if you wrote it yourself and you're reading it for the 5th or 6th time. Mm-hmm. It's really easy to miss. Unfortunately, it's long enough, because if it had been a small mass market paperback, it'd be about 300 pages long. And
Wow.
it's expensive to have that proofread by a professional proofreader.
Right. Have you tried a service called Grammarly?
I love Grammarly.
Grammarly was part of my last pass.
Yeah.
That's when I discovered it. I'm like, I need some help to find things, and then I put it through Grammarly, and it found a few more. I'm sure some slipped through.
So how does
Grammarly likes commas though, so be careful. Like,
it likes them, but sometimes it doesn't like them. It doesn't like it. Sometimes it's like, no, this parenthetical phrase doesn't deserve commas. And then,
It's good to know.
yeah, and it's also really. I don't know if there's a way to change the settings, but it's like, we assume that you are writing a technical manual and you don't want any superfluous words, so we're going to mark every one of them. And it's like, no, novels have superfluous words. It's okay.
So they don't have like a novel setting?
they do. I think I don't know if I have a professional version or not.
I don't have the professional version. I'll look at it and see how much it costs. But I think, if it sells at all and I tuck the money away, the next book I'll just. It was expensive. It was like, to have it proofread was going to cost me about $1,800.
Yeah, that sounds.
Yeah. But I mean, when I had Moment of Truth was only like 50 or 60 pages long, and I hired a professional proofreader to go through it. Good thing, and she actually did a lot of RPG books, so she even had like a couple of like rules questions as she read through it, which is
Nice.
awesome.
Yeah.
But I mean, her rates were reasonable, but it was. I mean, this is something that's 6 or 7 times larger, word count wise. So I'm like, ugh.
What is the word count?
The word count. Oh, I don't know offhand.
300 pages. It's got to be like over 100,000, probably.
Yeah, it was definitely
150.
I think it was like 160.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and I just finished the first chapter of the second one. So I'm having fun
You
doing
made
it.
a lot of stuff up.
Yes.
That's great.
Yes. And it's. I mean, I spend a lot of time writing anyway, but it's usually for games.
Right.
But and there's really no place to go and nothing really to do, so I'm sitting in front of my laptop and write books. So we'll see.
Making me read 160,000 words backwards, paragraph by paragraph, will totally get state secrets from me.
I can see that.
I give up. I'll tell you whatever you want. Please don't make me do this anymore.
I understand. I totally understand. All right. So anyway, if you want to go, you can look for it. You just search my name, Stu Venable, on Amazon, and it'll pop right up, right there. In this episode of Happy Jacks RPG Podcast, Adam from Utah writes in about adventuring in a peaceful city. MRCJ writes in about good and evil, and Muddy Boots sends us a horror story. But first, if you'd like to email us, you can email us at happyjacksrpg@gmail.com. That's happyjacksrpg@gmail.com. We have quite a backlog of emails right now, so if you send an email now, we probably won't read it for months. Sorry, Canada. We have a forum, happyjacksforum.com. And then we also are on the social meteors. Happy Jacks RPG, all one word, on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and MeWe. If you'd like to watch the show live, go to happyjacks.org/live on Fridays at 7 p.m. Pacific time, and you can see our faces while we talk at you.
Don't forget about Discord. Forrest runs a nice ship over there.
That's right. Is it Happy Jacks RPG as well? Do you know?
I don't know. There's a server link. It's on the website.
Oh, it is. Okay.
Yeah.
Go to happyjacks.org and you can find the link there. Anyone else have anything that's going on interesting that's you want to mention on the show?
I do. I'm afraid to mention it, though.
Why?
I've got another Kickstarter coming.
Oh, do you? What's that?
Great American Witch is coming out finally.
Excellent.
We're doing something different with it in the Kickstarter. I don't want to do a big, like, $10,000 or whatever Kickstarter. I just need to get it out because I don't have a lot of faith in the marketplace right now. Also, it's done. I mean, it's ready. I just need to recoup costs. So the publisher and I decided to do a very small scale, 2-week, low goal Kickstarter. And we'll have it out by September. So
awesome.
It's done, ready. It's great. I love the game. I can't wait to keep designing in it. I'm going to be playing in the Witch world for quite some time now as a designer. I'm having a lot of fun with it.
Cool. Now, is it you've got your artwork and everything? It's all laid out and ready to go?
Yeah.
Oh,
everything's
wow.
laid out. In fact, talking about proofing, doing that right now, and I'm with Happy. I wish somebody else would do it.
Right.
But yeah, it's ready. The system's solid. We've been running it on Happy Jacks, and the game has been great. And I'm ready to put it out. So we're looking forward to that.
Excellent.
Actually waiting on some cover art. So as soon as that's ready, I'll probably be posting more about it.
Cool.
I heard GenCon Online is starting next week.
Oh,
Is it?
That's right. I
Which
wonder.
is interesting and weird.
Yes, and well, I mean, Strategicon, our local conventions here, that the Maycon. What is that? Gateway?
I always get it mixed up.
GameX. That's GameX.
GameX.
Yeah, GameX was virtual, and then they just announced that Orcon, which is SeptemberCon, is going to be virtual as well. So I canceled my hotel room. Anything else? Anyone working on? No. Okay. All right.
I'm going to be running a playtest of the new Dune system.
Oh, are you really?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Sadly, I can't, talk about it because I said I wouldn't. But
Did you sign an NDA?
I could say it's similar to their John Carter of Mars system, which I'm actually not that big of a fan of.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm pretty sure of how it's going to run because it's so similar to that system. So I'm sure the playtest will be okay, but it will be very interesting to see if they can actually make it feel like Dune, because Dune is bananas, right? It's like how finger guns. The rifts should feel like. When you're playing it in the new rifts, you're like, holy shit! I saw it with 15 fucking powers and feats and everything, and my boom gun will kill everybody in one shot. You feel awesome, and that's how Dune should feel, in my opinion, because you're like a mentat, so you're like actually a computer, or you can read fucking minds or whatever.
Right.
So we'll see.
I think some of the risk of doing these big licensed games is that you get these old trad systems or older systems that are focused on combat and not on what the license should feel like.
Right.
And it seems like to me, Dune should be way more interested in politics than in can you punch somebody?
Well, I mean, it's obviously both if you read the books, because there's intrigues are both stabbing people and poisoning people as well as doing political shit. I was hoping for something that is much more like the A Song of Ice and Fire system, which I think does intrigue very well.
Yeah, it's a great game.
But we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
I do like how you refer to Rifts as the finger gun game. So I think going forward, I think that's the term I'm going to use.
The finger gun game.
James V in the chat wanted to know about the paperback that's under the name Stu Venable Jr. That is my name, but they don't allow a suffix for the author title, and if you put if I put Junior in it, it makes that my last name. So yay, Amazon. So it's just Stu Venable. That one is probably not available for purchase either. You want the one that has the rock on the cover. If I could delete it, I would, but all I could do is make it unavailable.
Amazon remembers everything.
You want the one with the rock. Who would
It wasn't a rock.
It was a rock.
Oh, by the way, speaking
Novel.
of music, have you guys seen Eurovision Song Contest, the Fire Saga story?
No, that's the show for Stu.
It's on Netflix.
Never even heard of this.
It's a Will Ferrell
Will
vehicle.
Ferrell thing.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Oh, I saw it and I wanted to watch it when I saw the trailer.
Oh my god,
It looks hilarious.
it is awesome. I bought the soundtrack. The soundtrack, the production value of the songs in the soundtrack is phenomenal, and the lyrics are the corniest lyrics you could ever have, which is just like the Eurovision Song Contest. It's amazing. It is such a good movie.
It's like when A Mighty Wind when it came out, and I had to listen to the soundtrack over
Again,
and over and over.
Oh,
see,
God.
if you put hackneyed, horribly written music in a movie, I'm gonna love it. Spinal Tap, A Mighty
What'd you think of
Wind.
Hamilton?
Wind.
I haven't seen Hamilton yet.
Oh,
in
it's
fact,
so good.
I'm probably going to watch it tomorrow with my daughter
So good.
because she's watching it for the 12th or 13th time.
Yeah, sounds right.
We were supposed to go in July for our anniversary. Or no, it was supposed to be earlier than that. So I was so happy to see it on Disney. It was really good.
Did it give you a rain check for later? Or?
No, we got a full refund.
Oh, you got a
because
refund.
Pantages just shut down. They're like, we're not going to see you until next year. Have a good life.
Right. One of the Boggards bought tickets for he and I to go see the Letterkenny live show, and they actually said, hold on to your tickets. We will tell you what dates your tickets will be good for whenever it happens. If you want a refund, we'll give you one. But if you want to make sure you get to see the show, because they sell out fast, just hold on to your tickets, and at some point in the future, that will happen. So, but Eurovision, I gotta say, it is a sweet film. It has a good heart to it. It's got a fun story, and some of the actors. I can't remember the name of the actor. The guy that plays the Russian entry into the Eurovision contest. That guy almost steals the entire show. He is so funny. And that they use Will. I was going to say Will Smith. Will Ferrell sings his own stuff in it, and he's got a decent voice. He's not bad. But the other actors, they use professional singers for their voices, and like the female lead, Sigrid, the woman who sings her songs, has the most gorgeous voice I've ever heard in my life. She's just amazing. But if you haven't seen that movie, I strongly suggest you watch it. Even if you're not a Will Ferrell fan, because I've talked to people who've watched it and liked it and hate Will Ferrell.
Okay.
So, who would like to read A Peaceful City from Adam in Utah? Or should I read it?
I can read it.
Okay.
It's a short one, so I'll take it.
All right.
Hey, Jackers. Heard you needed emails, so I thought I'd oblige. Thank you so much for the advice on my previous question about running deities. Even though it came long after I ran the session, it's influenced upcoming story beats. On that note, my campaign has taken a major turn. Well, they always. What started as a horror-themed Monster Hunter game has turned into a high-seas pirate adventure. Let's be clear, I love that this happened, and it's why I love this hobby, but it has presented the problem of prep. In planning the various islands, I had an idea for a city whose citizens are retired sailors and adventurers who are just over it. This, combined with the geographic location, makes it a peaceful town, not by law, but by humanity and soreness. My question is twofold. How do you run a peaceful city without making the players think there's some dark, sinister secret? Because, of course, they will.
Of course.
What activities or events would you as a player like in one of these peaceful cities? And, as always, your show is a delight. Keep it up, stay safe, and stay thirsty. Adam from Utah.
He didn't give us a PS to take a drink.
I'm going to do it anyway.
I
Like you, Adam.
He said stay thirsty.
Oh,
Maybe he
man.
specifically
And
doesn't
depending
want
on
us.
where in Utah he's from, that might be code.
It might be mineral water.
Man, I was so angry the first time I found out I was in a dry county and that dry counties exist. No, you can't get a beer here. What do you mean I can't get a beer here?
Well, if you order a steak, you can. Or if you join a club. Yeah.
This is a dry county.
Have I
What the
told
fuck's
my
a dry county?
Have I told my GenCon story about trying to buy alcohol in Indianapolis? Buying
I think you've told it before, but I don't remember.
buying alcohol in Indianapolis is like trying to go to a cannabis dispensary here. There's tons of security. You go inside this room, you give them your ID, you sign stuff, and then they buzz you through to a door, and you're still nowhere near the alcohol. Then you come to another counter and you tell them what they want, and they bring it to you. They ring it up, and then they put it in a bag, and then you get to leave. But it's weird. It's not like you go into a store and just buy alcohol.
I thought it was bad enough in Colorado you couldn't get alcohol at grocery stores.
Yeah, on Sundays.
When I moved to LA, I was like, wow, you can just buy alcohol anywhere. This is amazing.
And now you can almost buy pot everywhere.
Yeah, almost.
Yeah.
Okay, back to his question.
All right.
Well,
I had thought on this. I think that one thing I would do is demonstrate through the behavior of the citizens of this peaceful city that it actually is peaceful. So what I would do is have somebody threaten the city in some way, maybe like a big festival is going on, everybody's out playing music, eating, feasting, and like some asshole comes in and messes things up. And then the entire town just fortifies around this one asshole and pushes them the hell out. Say, no, we don't do that here.
Right.
And then, that gesture would tell every player, like, oh, well, yeah, well, they're on the up and up. I mean, seriously, who else would do that?
Well, they might consider them all to be mind controlled, because if they all do thing at once, surrounded non-believer, they're going to flip the fuck out.
I guess that's a good point. Yeah, they could be zealots.
I think, personally, just have them be normal people. Right? I mean, you're going to have people who are dicks. You're going to have people who are not dicks. If the culture is around being peaceful, which is not breaking the law or not fighting, it can be like, somebody wants to get into a fight, or if like a player does, and everybody's like, whoa, 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 we don't do that here. I think you're confused. But like,
I would take it one step further and say, meet them at the edge of a blade and say, don't bring your bull to our tea shop. And, don't start none, won't be none. Sometimes when you start with violence, people kind of get the hint. Sometimes they want to test the limits.
Right. And and you got to be ready for the party to want to test those limits, because they might. You never know. The one thing I would wonder is if this is a town that's made up mostly of people who are old adventurers who are just over that lifestyle, you may have a town full of extremely dangerous people. Mm-hmm. And you don't want to start a fight here, because the guy who's sweeping the floor in the general store may very well turn around and just kick your ass break the broom handle off and quarterstaff you to death.
It turns out he killed the last black dragon.
Right.
Right.
With a stick.
I hear the Rick and Morty episode when they went to the Purge planet, and everybody was all nice and sweet, but when the sun came down, they were murderers. And really good at it.
One thing we had at East Jesus, because, we are peaceful, we don't fight each other, but, people will come in and visit us. If somebody's being a dick, then it's just, you need to leave. Right. You need to leave right now. You don't come into my house and do this. Right. So anywhere that people are, or they can even see, like, somebody else coming off the ship, and they're in, like, just in a general store, and the store owner's like, you need to get the fuck out of here. You're not allowed to do that here. Who are you? Why are you in my house? I thought this was a store. This is my house. This is my place. You need to get out of here. And if he tries to make trouble, then all the other people come around, because that's what would happen if we were having a party. If we had like 100 people over there and somebody's a problem, once I start interacting with them, if they are pushing back, everybody else around is suddenly interacting with them, and they get the message. Because we don't want fights.
Right.
We don't want problems.
If there are lots of islands, I would lead with a strong flavor, a la Star Trek, because they may or may not be on this island forever. They may be on this island one adventure. And so I kind of lean in to the strong flavors so that this place is a memorable place. It was a very kind of special thing. If there's no scenario or adventure that could kind of kick off here, don't be subtle.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I'm in favor of never being subtle.
Players don't get subtle until they do.
Right.
Oh, they go, oh, that's what you're trying to do? Oh.
And the thing is, and Tappy kind of mentioned this, I wouldn't make everyone happy and friendly, because if everyone they meet is happy and friendly, they're always going to expect that something's up. Someone's mind controlling them, or they're all part of a cult, or something's going on. But if some of the people aren't friendly and aren't nice, but they're not gonna, get into a fight with you because they either don't want to or they don't need to, then I mean, and that might help. If not everyone there is friendly and affable, I think that will help sort of assuage their fears that there's some sinister dark secret.
Mm-hmm. Especially if they start thinking that. If you start hearing them say that to each other or say that to you, then having like a curmudgeon like Stu show up. And be like, oh, okay. these aren't...
There's no way that guy's mind controlled.
They're not communists.
And the other thing I would wonder is, this is more kind of on a world building question, is, is this city part of some larger state, or is it its own city state? Is it stateless? Because it could. I mean, it's possible if you've got enough people who are all dangerous enough to be able to take care of themselves, you may not need a state.
Yeah.
And
maybe that's why it's peaceful. It's because everybody just minds their own.
Right.
And it turns.
Go ahead.
It's like each one of them is a nuclear bomb.
Right.
Right? If you have like a level 20 like wizard, that person can go out and destroy an army themselves, and we're 250 of these.
Right.
Stay the fuck away.
Exactly.
Or come on by and don't cause trouble.
Mhm.
But the only
make
people
a
who
nice cup of
understand,
tea.
right? And the only people who understand old adventures are old adventures.
Right.
We don't want trouble anymore. We don't want kinks coming up and giving us saying you need to do this for us. You just want to leave. Just leave me alone. My knees hurt, back aches. I got too many magical items in my cellar.
I need a hip replacement, but they haven't invented those yet. No, what?
If somebody starts a combat, you could give them some coaching. Oh, look, you're doing this wrong. When you hold your sword, you want to...
And it was I know how to fight. Okay, maybe you do.
Right? Where you're from.
Your funeral. Now, his second question.
Condescending to everybody.
Yeah, what activities or events would you like to see? I think there should be porch time, where all the old adventurers come out and grunt as they sit down. Oh, well.
Yeah, they all make dad noises.
Yeah, the sun's coming down a bit. It's a little cool tonight.
Right? If you have a party of people who haven't heard everybody's stories.
Actually, one thing that's really fun that, again, is a slabs thing, is there's a guy built himself a stage because he wanted to be a rock star. He's not a rock star, but every Friday night, everybody comes in for an open mic. So the entire, all the slabs, which sometimes is around 1,000 people, comes to this place. Well, I shouldn't say all 1,000, but a whole bunch of people come to this place, and that's when people talk and people do their things, and there's all the mingling and people are playing music, and then the rest of the time they stay to themselves. Because again, old adventurers, they know everybody's stories. They talk to everybody. They want to sit on the porch and be left alone.
Right.
But there might be a thing that brings everybody together, and that's when you get stories. That's when you get people talking. That's when old rivalries happen. But in general, nobody wants to fight because they've all been fighting for too long.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and a tavern in a place like this would probably... would be a really boring place.
Yep.
As I'm thinking about it, I was going to say the exact opposite. No, it would be a really boring place. There wouldn't be fights because no one wants to get a fight with anyone else because they're all dangerous, and you're not going to come out unscathed. And they probably have sing along nights. It's it's almost like an adventurer's retirement community. It's like Leisure World for adventurers, right?
They get really into tic-tac-toe. I mean, really into it. Table slipping.
That's what I'm thinking. Maybe there's tonight's round 5 of the chess tournament.
Yeah.
You should come and watch. It's riveting. Backgammon.
I like the scene from the karate flicks where the two guys, they size each other up, and one kind of pays the other a compliment because in their minds they've already had the fight.
Yeah,
right. They already figured it. Both of them already know who would have won.
Right.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Adam from Utah, for the email. We appreciate it.
I'll take the next one.
Okay, go ahead.
Hello, everyone. Hello. Light on emails. Oh, sorry. Concept of Good and Evil from MRCJ. Hello, everyone. Hello. Light on emails. Well, when you get to the bottom of the barrel, you will see me looking right back up at you. So here's a thought about how role-playing has progressed through the years and something kind of odd. When you're old like me and Stu, Jib, and Stork, if you lived through the years of the Satanic Panic and Bad, bothered about Dungeons and Dragons, and wanted the 60-minute and watched the 60-minute story and the chat chit track and the friend's parent freaking out, here's a strange part of the time when I think D&D and AD&D of that era, the early 80s, that game, which was built on the concept of good versus evil. The main thrust of the way the game was designed seemed to be for good, the players, to overcome evil. It might not be the way it was played by 16-year-olds, but it was the way it seemed to be created.
Yeah.
When I think of the character classes alignments, the alignments of all the player races, for instance, were flavors of good, and the modules as used for how the game should be played, it all pushed the players to act as agents of good, whatever that might be. It seemed that at that moment in time, it was never more clear that the players were supposed to embrace being on the side of good. Maybe it's my perspective. It seems like concepts about good and evil are not as baked into game design as it used to be in the early D&D. Much of the time, concepts are simply ignored. Games like GURP, Savage Worlds, Tales from the Loop, many other games released from the 90s on seem to ignore the concepts altogether. It's not relevant to what the design is communicating. Most games in modern settings don't seem to address the issue, even most superhero games. Further, some games like Vampire and maybe many White Wolf games are elevated evil or have designed players to take on monstrous behavior as part of the character concept and the game in general. It seems like in many more recent games, the concept of good and evil are more ambiguous. What do you think? MR, CJ. I'll let you guys respond while I breathe.
I think it's a good thing. I think that games that explore the texture of ethics and morality as a relative beast is way more interesting than supernatural good and supernatural evil. I mean, I think that we know in the real world, absolute evil and absolute good are hard to define. And especially when you start slathering evil across entire races, it gets problematic. I like games that are complex in that way. In fact, I design games that are, just because it's more interesting than I am bad and you are good.
Yeah, I'm big on moral ambiguity in games. I love moral ambiguity. I remember I threw in the first D&D campaign I ran after my long game hiatus, the one that Tappy was in, the 4th edition game. The party came across a village that had been ransacked or had been raided multiple times by a bunch of goblins. I don't know if you remember this. And so the party figured out where the goblin village was, and they go there, and there's only adult male goblins. Because someone had went and kidnapped all of the women and children goblins and were holding them ransom and forcing the goblins to go out and do these raids. And it broke many of the minds of the players to suddenly realize, wait, these goblins aren't evil?
Goblins are people too?
Right. And they're like, but and then they started acting like murder hobos, and some of them went, no, stop, no, this is the wrong thing to do. We shouldn't be killing these goblins for some reason, though we're not quite sure why. But I love that kind of moral ambiguity when especially when you put the players in a position where they have their assumptions about what the situation should be like in their own minds, and all of a sudden it's all turned on their head, and they're like, I think we might be the baddies.
Yeah.
There's skulls on our uniforms.
We've got skulls on the uniforms. I had an interesting situation in the Traveler game that I ran way back with Bill, where I made all of these cultures that were supposed to be relatively dystopian, they all were dystopian. They're supposed to be fucked up, and all of these factions were kind of like going against each other, and the players, my idea was that they're just sort of going to navigate through this world and just kind of see what happens. And Bill's character, or really Bill, found out what happened in one of the cultures and was like, that's super fucked up, we need to change that. And so, like, the morality of the character is defined what the game was going to be about, and that's a good thing. But me determining that thing was like unambiguously bad, I think would have had a very different feel on the game. You know what I mean? Like, have you guys seen The Good Place?
Mm-hmm. I love it.
That idea of, like, some actions are always good and some actions are always bad. You know, is that something that you want in your game or hard-coded into your game like D&D? And for me, I think it's much more interesting when you're trying to figure out your morality or your player's morality. I mean, that's kind of like a cool thing to just sort of sit and ponder, is like, as opposed to who is my character's family, it's like, you know, how does my character's morality play out? Like, so yeah, I think I think it's a lot more interesting to let the players figure that out than you, but don't take it easy on them and give them something that you know, because I didn't think that people would freak out that much about this one thing, and in hindsight, I should have, but I think it's a lot more interesting to have it be player-led if there's any sort of morality.
I like this letter because he was talking. I was there in the '80s during the Satanic Panic.
Yeah, so was
and
I.
so,
I was alive.
You know, I was telling people that, you know, that's not what D&D is about. But I feel like it's interesting because he's kind of tracking a trajectory in the '90s. You know, suddenly Wolverine became the most popular character for Marvel Comics. This guy who could and would kill even though he was a superhero. And I think that was really part of the zeitgeist, that you had these people, these dirty Harry types who, you know, might have to go beyond the law to get to right. You know, I mean, what's the name of that comic book? Seminal Watchmen.
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
come out
Yeah.
in the late '80s and really kind of start picking up a audience in the '90s. And it's really about this gray kind of thing.
There are no heroes in that book.
Yeah.
Right, you know? And so I think that was really a popular, you know, kind of almost flashback hangover to maybe the Nixon years or maybe, you know, Iran-Contra or whatever. I feel like in a lot of story games, I see a lot of this. You should be good. Like the way you play this game is you orient yourself for good. But what I see like with Apocalypse World a lot more often is an idea about politic. Go do what you want, go kill who you want, but there'll be consequences, you know? And it's interesting because it's not good or evil anymore. It is kind of like half what the players want to bring and half like what the GM responds to. And yeah, it's an interesting thing. Like what these games like don't have a Judeo-Christian grounding in what is good anymore.
That's almost kind of like the concept of morality from within or morality imposed from without.
Yeah.
And I mean, D&D with the alignments and all that stuff is definitely a morality imposed from within. I mean, the character is good or the character is evil, right? But when you decide you're going to be good because you simply want to avoid the consequences of doing certain things, that's it's still a kind of morality, but it's a very different kind of morality, and that's a very different kind of world that it would exist in. Because the world where morality is internal is very black and white. It's very no gray areas, on or off. Whereas the external imposed morality, for lack of a better term, is always going to be a gray area. There's always going to be questions on what the right thing is to do, and I really prefer the latter. I really do.
I think there's risk in engineering a game where there is a right and a wrong as part of the machine. I mean, we have through human history dealt with the fact of somebody thought they were immeasurably right about doing something.
Oh, sure. Against
somebody who they thought was immeasurably wrong about being a certain way. And when you hard code that, like good versus evil, I mean, and it comes from Tolkien, and I get it. I mean, there's sort of a literature precedent to this.
Sure.
But I think you run risk in that because, you know, there's always going to be outside of that There's always going to be outside of that. And so, and you're always going to be in a position as a player where you're trying to impose what you think upon the game world. And that, I don't think we need to play that fiction necessarily. I mean, we played it out time and time again. We should probably play fiction that gets into the matter, or who you are as a character, so we can play out drama that naturally comes from it, as opposed to saying, well, this is dramatic because it's evil. It's more interesting to say, well, this is dramatic because I think that's evil. And and that's just a different, I think that's an evolution in gaming. I don't think that it's a problem.
Agree.
In fact, I like that.
Now go ahead.
I just want to say that with Tolkien, I think one of the reasons why it is such like a clash between good and evil, and he has that like real strong like concept of it, again, is back towards those World War I roots, where the Germans were definitely bad.
Yeah.
There was no ambiguity there in England. The Germans
World War
were bad.
I? That war was. I think that war might have been. I think that war might have been inevitable, even if the Germans had not attacked.
I didn't think that the Germans were bad in reality. I think in England,
they
felt the Germans were bad.
Got it.
It's a very different thing.
I think he hung out at a theology college, and I feel like he was really. I don't want to get
angels.
Flamed.
Yeah.
I don't want to get flamed. So I feel like I will say that I feel like Tolkien was really trying to cast the nobler characters as people who could go either way. You know, the elves and the dwarves had just finished fighting a war, you know, and the hobbits didn't really judge them. They were just glad the war was over. Right. But they all needed to get together and stop the evil enemy from the south, because those people from the south, they were going to come take over, and they were really evil.
That's interesting. Have any of you seen? There's a movie about him.
Yeah,
like,
it's pretty softball.
Is it?
It's what?
It's pretty softball.
Oh, is it really?
Him.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. That's too bad. All right. But the thing I wanted to mention was about, because like both of the games I'm running right now are not the games I really wish I had started running if I had known there was going to be a global pandemic. Because both of the games I'm running right now are really heavy. Because I'm running Vampire, and that's a game where the player characters they're not good people. They're just not. I mean, Stork's playing a character who's like kind of trying to be a good person. And his character is kind of like probably the most he always plays oddball characters. It's probably the most moral vampire I've ever had in a vampire campaign. Because he took there's a thing in 5th edition called Bagger. So he does not feed off of people. He keeps a supply of bagged blood. Like,
does he have 288?
What's 288? So
Bagger 288?
Oh. No, he drinks blood that's been donated to like blood banks and stuff like that, and
taking away from patients who need it. Okay,
that's the possibility too. But if I brought that up, he's like, okay, I'm gonna stay here and wait until I fall into torpor. But he does feed because he has a herd. But it's just I mean, they're vampires are parasites. And that is kind of, and the other game I'm running is, which is going to start back up, not this weekend, but I think next weekend, is Call of Cthulhu. And the players aren't evil, but they are verging on the edge of insanity constantly. But I'm super evil because I'm running the cosmic horror monsters that are trying to get their toe under the tent flap of our reality. So I kind of wish right now I was running a comedy game, because that's what I really want to be running right now. And maybe I'll talk to the players and see if maybe, because they might all be on board to change the Call of Cthulhu game to something more slapstick, something more Scooby-Doo. No, we'll still use the same rules.
The floating vagabond.
Right. But to get something that's a little more lighthearted, I guess. Because I mean, right now, those are just tough games to run right now.
Yeah.
I've been feeling it with which I think that part of the secret is to like drive into the issues and make change that's positive, so that you can see hope even in a dark game. I mean, the Great American Witch is really dark. They're in the Rust Belt. It's falling apart economically, financially, socially, and these witches are just trying to keep it all together. But we're trying to infuse some positive. I mean, the unity of the coven and how they're trying to support the community. Big Thanksgiving dinner, bringing in all the people that are homeless from the train station in, and there's moments like that just kind of like, I think if you have a tough game, maybe lean into the hope. There was a moment when one of the transgender characters was outed to her father, who was the minister of one of the mega churches in the Midwest. And as kind of a surprise to everybody, the father said, well, you are as God made you. And what do I call you? Which I think inverting some of the horror and turn it into hope
Right.
might be our job as game masters, and try to like feed some of that in.
Yeah.
Or you could have the elder surfing god, Gnarly Hotep. Now,
I remember
Just go with me here.
someone sent us a portrait of Gnarly Hotep. Do you remember that? I can't remember who it was, and I probably have it around here someone. But it looks like Gnarlathotep, but he's on a surfboard. He's like,
that's it.
Surf guitar
I
in the
think
background.
the great thing is we have games in this crazy, crazy time to distract us from reality
Yeah.
yes,
and allow us to reset. And that's the beautiful part. And I don't know that this guy was necessarily judging what games were, but sometimes you just it might feel good to say we're gonna go kill everything, and sometimes it feels good to make everything nice.
Yeah, looking at your ethics doesn't mean you're going to find the right way,
sure.
right? Because it turns out there isn't, or else ethics would not be something that people still study and talk about. Like I, for example, kind of believe that if you're looking for a Hogwarts house, your personal ethics, are the best way to determine where you're going to be. Because Gryffindors are consequentialists. Like they believe that the ends justify the means, which is why they're so dangerous. Right?
I love that take. I love that take.
I mean, this is a right thing to do, and I can do whatever I want
And they're
to make
so
sure
like
the
a
right
true
thing to do
Slytherin.
happens.
Gryffindors are all
The Slytherins are Epicureans, and the Slytherins, it's a form of hedonism. But so they're trying to maximize their own pleasure, but part of that is maximizing that around others, or else you're just going to be eat, drink, for tomorrow we may die, and everything goes to hell.
Right.
It's more of like a noblesse oblige they're trying to do. It's like, oh, well, I will scratch your back, but you will do this for me, and you will do this for me, and all that, and all the structures that they put together. The most moral thing you can do for a Slytherin is to set it up so that you're at the top of it. Then you can take care of the most number of people, and you maximize your own pleasure.
right.
I think that Hufflepuffs are Kantians, where there are
sorry,
good.
What? They're what?
Immanuel
Kantian.
Kant.
Immanuel
Kant.
Kant.
Okay.
So
Is it real pissant?
there are good actions and there are bad actions, right? Like loyalty is good, friendship is good. These are always good actions. Betrayal is bad, being mean to people is bad, and that allows them to kind of put together these lives where it's very easy to support the people around them. And then Ravenclaws are more of like I forget what the school of Greek ethics is, but basically the idea is the most moral thing you can do is learn about everything, because then you are the person in the world who has the best idea of what is moral. So basically just be a nerd.
Right.
Yeah, I'm with the
that one.
Ravenclaws.
Right? So it's like, I should just learn more. Then I can make better decisions. When I make better decisions, I can make more moral decisions. And so I think that's a way better thing than doing it, rather than not like you like the color red.
Right.
Or what have you. Because I think people will group together also based on ethics and based on morality, but they're not like, so, what's your morality?
Right.
Right? It's just like, there are certain groups where giving each other a bunch of guff is just kind of how it goes.
I don't know. If you go to the South, one of the first things people ask you when they meet you, where you go to church?
Because if you're Lutheran, get out.
Master Vidar gave me a link to a Crafty Games game called Exorcism. I haven't looked at it, but I'm imagining that's sort of like maybe a comedic, like cosmic horror game. I don't know.
I don't know how you do comedy games. That would be hard.
Yeah, I don't need a comedy game. The comedy can just happen organically. But like we had a very serious tone conversation about Call of Cthulhu. It's like we want to run a dark Call of Cthulhu game, and now it's like I don't really want to do it.
You can run Call of Cthulhu light. I mean, like the time I did the movie Monster in 1930s.
Oh, but the way things are set up right now, I mean, we left with a. This is a spoiler for anyone who hasn't listened to that AP. We left with the party realized that because I sort of wrote out part of the King in Yellow. I kind of found a little bit of stuff about it and sort of expanded on it a little bit. And the party read this sort of synopsis of it because they refused. No, one of them actually read the play, and I gave like a synopsis of it, and they're realizing that what's going on right now in Washington D.C. with Harding, because they had a premonition about that, is very similar.
Harding?
Huh? President Harding. Yeah, it's 1923 July, so he's still alive. And the party realized that there was a bunch of parallels between that and the story of Casilda and the king. I can't remember the king's name, Ardonis or whatever it was. But the three main characters and all of the stuff that they're working on, and then they see almost a similar scene amongst Harding and the First Lady and his daughter, and they realize, oh my God, they're the ones that are going to bring about Hastur's return. So now they're on a boat back, because they figured this out in England. Now they're on a boat back to America, and I'm like, are they, is Harding going to die from pneumonia, or is the party going to assassinate him? I don't know. So I mean that storyline, where it's going, it's got to play out however it's going to play out. But I at this point I don't want to turn the game into a comedy game, because I mean the promise I made when we started that campaign is we were going to run a serious Call of Cthulhu game that was not going to be Scooby-Doo. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to break that promise, but it's tough to run that kind of stuff right now.
I think if you wrote this into Happy Jacks, Stu would say it's okay for you to take a break.
Well, I mean, I have been taking a break. I've been taking a break because we went on hiatus before Fair was supposed to start, and I've only been running the vampire game since then. But now the game that took my place while Fair was running is over, and now it's time to start that. I don't know. I'll talk to the players, and we'll figure out how we want to handle it.
Sounds like you need a palate cleanser. May I recommend The Happiest Apocalypse on Earth?
I was thinking about like a GURPS typical fantasy game where the party goes out and they sit and bicker with each other and fight and getting skirmishes and then go on wild adventures and save the world from evil. Because you're not going to save the world from evil in Call of Cthulhu. You're only going to put it off for a little while.
And go crazy in the process.
Right.
Yeah.
Unless you're already crazy and then you thought you did. But you don't know.
Exactly. Now, thank you, MRCD. Anything else about his email, or should we go ahead and move on to the horror story?
Let's do the horror story.
Now, it's long, so Tappy, if you want to split it in two, I'm happy to.
Yeah, let's do that.
Do you want me to start, or you want to start?
Why don't I start?
Okay. Horror story from Muddy Boots.
Greetings, you wastrels, grognards, boggards, laggards, and all the wonderful people who elevate you to decency. This is Muddy Boots, writing to you from a lockdown New York City. I promised some horror stories. Here is one. I'm a professional stagehand working in New York. At least I was until somebody tripped over the plug and the whole industry went dark.
Right.
Tape, you fools, tape!
I
already like this.
Gaffer's tape is really expensive.
Oh, man. So one time, I have a gaffer tape story. One time at Burning Man, I was using gaffer tape on an art car that was like this giant Cheshire cat, and so I put it in my mouth to rip like the gaffer tape and put it up, not realizing that gaffer tape is so sticky it will stick to the inside of your lips.
Yes.
And I found that out when I ripped off the entire inside of my lip 2 days before Burning Man started.
I'm gonna talk like this all the time.
Yeah, it was awesome. That was a great time.
That's when
So
you were
don't-
called Taffy.
Don't rip gaffer tape with your teeth.
No.
Is the lesson that I want everybody to know here.
All right.
Okay. This story comes from the backstage community. In the late 90s, a loadout brought a collection of people together overnight. RPGs became the agreed-on topic of discussion. Everybody either played or wanted to try them. Of the dozen or so people working, a handful decided to actually put a game together and agreed to run it.
He agreed
Two
to
of
run
us.
it. Right.
I agreed to run it, yeah. Two of us were grognards. One played it as a kid, but his girlfriend wanted to try it. And two brand new. The other grognard suggested his place, since it was big enough, had a table, and was centrally located. After calendar twister, we picked a date and time. A couple days later, Bob, the guy whose girlfriend wanted to play, told me we had to play at his place. Oh dear. His girlfriend, who I'm going to call Beth, insisted that we all come over to their place in the East Village. She wanted to make it an event.
She wanted to be a hostess. She wanted to host and like, yeah, right, sure.
Yeah. And so once she decided it was going to be somebody else's place, she demanded it would be at her place. This was the first warning sign ignored. Of course, they lived in a decrepit loft in Alphabet City, a long walk from any trains and not convenient to anyone.
What I don't. Does anyone know anything about New York? What is Alphabet City? No one knows. No.
I know where the East Village is, but
Yeah, I've heard of that. I've never heard of Alphabet City. I don't know.
Yeah,
We're West
I have
Coast.
no idea. Bob promised to do barbecue chicken to sweeten the deal. His chicken was always good and an effective bribe. We played phone tag and set it up at the new location. On the appointed day, we all trekked out to Avenue D. I was carrying a backpack full of game books and a couple sixes of beer. I arrived early for the 2 p.m. start and was pleasantly surprised to see food was almost done. At least there was food and drink, which was always questionable with Beth. The place had good light, a lot of space, and a 4 by 8 foot table.
Awesome
The loft was
size
probably
table.
gorgeous in the 50s. A big front space with south-facing windows and a hallway going back to bed and bathrooms. Bob was in a slightly better than usual mood, and Beth was her usual over-the-top self. She was a singer, songwriter, waitress, actor. I only knew her loosely through Bob. Next to arrive was Tim, the other experienced player, also bringing beer. Lastly arrived our other newbies with 2 more sixes. I'll call them Jen and Jane. They were both fresh out of college and both great to work with. They were and still are a great couple, very generous and inclusive. We had planned to do 4 hours, eat dinner, and do 4 more.
Wow. Long
That
game.
changed right away because Jen and Jane had picked up a big money loadout at 10, so we would have to leave just after dinner. No problem, I thought. This is an intro session, so we will do 5 and eat, then whatever. Everybody met or caught up while we set up the table. Beth was introduced to Jen and Jane. Beth immediately started being weird. Oh wow, you are such cute lesbians. I had a girlfriend in college. Everybody politely laughed. Tim passed out cold beer while rolling his eyes. The game was D&D 3.0. I had handed out a bunch of pre-gens and blank sheets. We talked about character creation and goals. We did all the stuff you'd normally do nowadays in session 0. Everybody agreed that we should do a short travel from a port city to a smaller town in search of an old tomb. We decided to actually make characters. We skipped parts, deciding to fill in as we went. Jen and Jane were intrigued, and I left them with Tim to guide them. I worked with Bob and Beth, the more difficult pair. Bob played, quote, a fighter, I guess, end quote, and Beth insisted on being a bard. I tried
All
to explain
singer-songwriters want to be bards, I'm telling you.
Yeah. a bar didn't really fit in with what everybody said they wanted to do. Bob tried to ask me some questions, and every time Beth interrupted him. Sometimes she would physically get in front of him. The process went on that way. Every time somebody tried to ask a question, Beth got in the way. She kept up the rude remarks about Jen and Jane. At one point, asking Tim how he was enjoying his threesome.
What?
Wow.
Yeah.
We were all getting uncomfortable with her behavior. With character creation complete, we had another quick discussion.
Should I start from here? Because you're past halfway.
Oh, sure. Yeah,
Okay.
do it.
With character creation complete, we had another quick discussion of goals, and everybody seemed to be back on board. We took a short break, and fresh beer was handed around. I started the story. I didn't railroad anything, but there was some hand-waving and some fast-forwarding to get to the fun parts. I even explained what I was doing as we went. Everyone agreed that they had met on a ship and shared the story of a tomb. So we started right on the dock. First steps: find lodging and gather information. They found an inn with the tap room. The real trouble began then. Beth tried to hog the spotlight. She insisted on performing at the inn. I went along with it, but kept spreading the focus. She started to get more insistent as others tried to do things. Jen and Jane were working the room, finding out about the road ahead. Tim was buying horses and supplies. Bob was doing nothing. There's an ellipses in there. After Beth set a reasonably good reception and some coppers in the hat. Beth got irate. I'm better than that. I deserve gold. We all think that when we songs.
Let me tell you what being in a band is like.
Right. Jane tried to explain the economy, doing a good job of it too. We shifted to Tim and did some real fast in-town stuff. Beth pouted and Bob drank. Ruh-roh. We were all nursing our beers, drinking socially, except Bob. Bob was power drinking. In the middle of Jen's turn, Beth announced she was going over to a table by herself in the corner of the tap room. I told her, okay, but let me finish with Jen. We were actually starting to get some good RP and the story cooperation going on. We made it through several rounds of interaction for everyone. Then in the middle of Tim trying to settle the tab, Beth yells, I stabbed the guy next to me! I've played with players like this before.
That's exciting.
It's like, this is getting boring. I'm going to kill somebody.
That's exactly what happened.
Yeah. Of course she does. I could see what was going on. I'd dealt with this kind of personality before. I stopped the action and asked if she really wanted, if that is what she really wanted to do. Yes, I stab him. I then explained that could happen. I explained what could happen and why that isn't a good course of action, or even a good way to play. Beth insisted. The short of it is the bard was subdued, beaten, arrested, and no one else in the party was going to help. Thank God we made it to dinner. Things chilled out after we ate and talked. Bob sobered up and came alive. Everybody was having fun, even with Beth being a petulant spotlight hog. I had talked separately with everyone except Tim. His glances to me told me his opinion. After dinner, Tim was the other grognard. Is that correct? Okay. Mm-hmm. With everyone except Tim, his glances told me his opinion. After dinner, Jen and Jane had to head out, so we said our goodbyes and then left. Numbers reduced. We started back in. We made a point. I'm assuming that means that fewer people showed up to the next game. We made it the plot twist to reduce the party size, and set out to buy the bard out of the clink. Bob was more animated, and he and Tim actually dug out some cool plot. I just followed them with a lot of yes he does, making it up from what they were interested in. Making it up from what they're interested in. Beth led up the left turns, and I rationed spotlight. Things were back on track, and we were actually having fun. So Beth got up and went down the hall. After about 20 minutes of solid play with just Tim and Bob, a call comes down the hall. "Bob, can you come here?" Bob said, "I'll be right back," and went to see Beth. Meanwhile, Tim and I finished up some stuff. We were just getting to the point where we needed everyone to come back when we heard from down the hall, squeak thump, or squeak thump, depending on what phase he was in it, I'm assuming, and so on. Rhythmically, Tim and I stared at each other with that, "You have got to be kidding me" look. Tim broke into silence, whispering, "We aren't leaving any of the beer, are we?" I shook my head, "No." And we packed up and bugged out like Fafford and Grey Mouser, shadows in the night. Tim and I went to his place, drank all of the beer, and talked about gaming. Neither one of us saw or heard anything from Bob for a few weeks. We weren't scheduled to work together, but I thought he would at least call. Finally, I got home late one night, and there was a message on my machine from him. Hi, dude. You know how to change locks, right? I'll give you $100 if you can help me do it. Okay, first off, what the fuck? You go to Home Depot, you buy a new lock, you find a screwdriver, and you change your fucking lock.
These are people in New York. They can't even drive.
I guess. $200 if you can come over as soon as you get this. I bought cylinders already. Oh, he's like hardcore. He's actually changing the cylinders rather than the whole assembly. That's impressive. I made a fast stagehand. I made a fast $200 and got a huge apology. Beth got a new address that had been a long time coming, apparently. Jen and Jane jumped in with both feet. They are now married. They are married now and live out west someplace. They are serious gamers, and Jane is a really good GM. Tim still plays, and I see him occasionally, usually working. Bob moved back to the southeast a decade ago. Like most horror stories, it's the people who are the real monsters. You can just see how social pressure and need for a game can make things worse. Now, with more life experience, I'd handle it differently. Lastly, no real names were used in this. They know who they are. Hope you enjoyed it. Cheers, Muddy Boots. P.S. This space intentionally left blank.
My favorite part about this email is the epilogue. Like I'm feeling like closure on all of the,
right.
all the characters.
It's the life goes on scene at the very end of the film. All right. Any comments on that? Any?
So what makes me feel bad about this is back in the old days, there weren't a lot of women who felt welcome in gaming.
Exactly, yes.
And I feel like this, I saw this story happen. Not in all its gory details, but, plenty of times. And I feel like, it's just weird. I wish, I don't know.
I played, when I played GURPS in college, it was in the 80s, and our gaming group existed damn near the whole time I was in college, 5 years. And during that time, I think we had 2 women come into and eventually leave the group, as well as numerous men. And it was very rare to have women in games back then. And then later on, after I graduated, Bill and I became roommates, and we started running games, larger games, sometimes too large, like 12, 15 people. And then I remember this one guy who was a player. He was a dice cheat. But he brought his girlfriend to one of the games. She'd never played a role-playing game before. And she came in, and she had a very, very high, almost a squeaky voice. Almost sounded like Betty Boop. Are you familiar with who I'm talking about? Mm-hmm. Okay. And we're playing, and she's being reasonably quiet. It helped her make a character. And they get in a fight. And she's like, I'm going to stab him in the groin with my sword. And I died. I'm like, that's awesome. I'm like, yes, GURPS has rules for that.
Yes, you are.
But I don't know. I sometimes get uncomfortable when we get horror stories where the bad person in the horror story or the person from which the horror comes from is a woman, because we have been such an insular hobby for decades and really tried to like exclude women from the hobby, either intentionally or just by being assholes, that I'm kind of reluctant even to read those stories sometimes. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's exactly what I was trying to get at.
Yeah.
But there's a certain point where I think there are couples gaming groups maybe, but I don't know if that's necessary. I think it's a weird relationship thing.
Well, you're taking a
I've
group
had
dynamic.
girlfriends who were like, I want to be part of everything you do, and it's just like, no.
Right. Well, it's like you have a group dynamic, and then within that group dynamic is a whole other dynamic.
Yeah.
That is way more. I mean, if you're talking about a married couple, at least, way more important.
Yeah.
And than what's going on around it, and I don't know. But I mean, who knows? I don't know. I'm trying to think if I don't know.
I think a lot of it is
played with a lot of
what
couples.
What is the intention of the new person coming in, and the intention of somebody in a couple, gender agnostic, is I want to get my new partner's or my partner's attention. Well, that means spotlight. Mm-hmm. And then you have these problems where this person doesn't know how to do that doesn't know like how role playing kind of is done and how you share spotlight and allow other people to do other things. They just want to be great so that this person can see that they're great. Or maybe they have just met all of these people and they want to show them how great they are.
Right.
And show up to win.
Right. Or also to like me. I want you guys to like me. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I've seen guys do this too, where they're so desperate to do that, like, I'm just going to stab a guy, or I'm going to get into a fight with this person so, you all can see how great I am, or I'm going to jump off the cliff and onto the dragon. No, God, please don't do that. I had a friend whose new girlfriend came to a game who just didn't know how to, wasn't really comfortable role playing, but really, really wanted to be a part of it, and just kept on getting super frustrated, more and more frustrated. And then my friend, her girlfriend, they became their own unit in the group, and this was Apocalypse World. So there was kind of like a gaming group of 2 and then another gaming group of 3, and then these groups started bouncing off each other in a very similar way as who make threats, which was really cool to see. But it became a problem. It became a big problem, and eventually the group of 3 killed the group of 2, and we ended the game. So I mean, having new people in who don't really get it and really want to be a part of it, or really like the other people and want them to like them in the game, I see that as much more of a problem than just relationships.
Right.
I think another thing going on here, which I see with a lot of new players, is the idea that I don't see where this is going. I don't see the action. I'm not getting the feedback I'm used to from entertainment. So therefore, I'm going to throw a hand grenade into it.
Right, exactly.
And I will force the story to move forward. And, there's no antidote for that. And, taking a fuck break in the middle, I don't think was appropriate at all. But, trying to move the story forward, maybe.
It saved them from having to do like another 2 hours of role playing with them.
Okay.
I mean, really, that was the most generous thing she did.
But I think there are ways to handle that, and I think I think they did a good job in as much as they could. But I mean, it's really about coaching them through it, and then okay, well maybe this is boring, and I need to as a GM introduce a conflict so we can get past this hump.
Right.
But I do see that a lot with new players.
Yeah. Maybe new players need like little solo shots with like a couple of players where they get some attention and figure out if they even want this, as opposed to coming into these big, groups where they have to make their own space.
It's almost like you want to have not training wheels, but you want to have some kind of like an introductory thing. It's like, this is what role-playing games are actually like. Go ahead.
Well, I think that people who want to play the game, if they're new, play the game. I think it's people who don't want to play the game but want attention or people liking them and stuff like that. And I don't know if an introduction is going to help, because that's not the game they want to play.
Well, I think it depends. I mean, I think that there are probably some players that come in with certain expectations because they hear the term game, and they assume there's winners and losers. You know what I mean? And that's something you just kind of have to. People have to break out of their preconceptions of what a game can be. Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, yeah, you're going to have those kind of people who are like, I want to be the center of attention all of the time, or I don't really want to do this, so I'm going to try to sabotage it or whatever. But I do think there are some players who honestly come in and want to try out the hobby, but they don't understand that it is not a win-lose proposition. Right, exactly. So, I got to say, James V said, but did she actually hit the dude in the groin? You got to finish the story, Stu. If I recall correctly, she rolled successfully, and I think she rolled almost max damage, and the guy was down. So, there you are.
Perfect.
All right.
Yeah, it's not a girl thing, Tappy.
No.
I agree. I mean, it's a people thing. But I think even people who want attention and show up for the wrong reasons, in the spirit of growing the hobby, they might enjoy gaming if they had a training wheel session.
Few hurdles. Like when I run games for kids, there's a lot of rules I just ignore, and I stick to the story, I stick to the beats. But this was 3rd edition, so really no help there.
When I was like 15, so like almost 30 years ago now, I was playing L5R, and I've told the story a bunch of times. And it was my buddy Mitch was running like the first winter court game, and I wanted to be a fucking badass crane samurai who could murder everybody, and I made it. I figured it out and I made that character. But I wasn't really interested in role-playing, even though I had role-played a bunch. I didn't even know I wasn't. I thought I was interested in role-playing. I'm going to show everybody, I'm going to have a great time doing this. But my intention was really, I want to show everybody how great I am at this, especially my martial artisan. I made an artisan character that, I managed to, use specific rules to make it so I could basically kick anybody's ass ever. And I just wanted to get into a fight. And the game was not getting into fights. And eventually I got kicked out of the game.
Oh, really?
Because I got into a fight and murdered somebody. And Mitch was like, you got it. I'm sorry, dude. This is not the game we're playing. You got to go. Wow. And you are absolutely correct. It was the right decision to make. But I knew what the game was. I knew how to play. I'd been playing role-playing games at that point for 7-8 years. So again, I don't think it's like they don't know, or it's like they don't know the rules. It's like, I was just so excited I wanted to get into a duel so badly. want to get into a duel.
Have you tried Assassin's Creed?
Well, I mean...
That might be the game for you.
I was 15. I don't think Assassin's Creed existed. But yeah, I think that's the problem. And people in that game with me were not having fun. Because I was not playing the game with them. I was playing the game I wanted to play.
Right.
Yeah.
We had another one that was a Scorpion game. And one of the people in that game did not want to play the game the rest of us were playing. And did a bunch of other stuff that was very, self-aggrandizing. Or, turning on the other characters and turning on the Scorpion clan, which is a very, very weird and strange thing to do. Without any real reason for it. And that really threw a big wrench into the game we were playing. Not in quite so bad of a way, like I stab him, but it was just as much as a destruction to the game itself, as somebody randomly saying, I'm going to stab the guy next to me. But that person wanted everybody to see how great they were at intrigue. And so he decided to do intrigue against us. which is a fine game, but his intention was not to play a role-playing game, is to shine stuff on himself.
Right.
So nothing actually made sense, if you guys know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Much like stabbing the person next to you doesn't make any sense. So, I don't know. I don't think that a lot of people think about, what is my intention here? When you step up to a role-playing game, it's a fucking role-playing game, right?
Right.
But I think that might have a lot to do with it.
James V said, I usually pull the attention seekers aside and honestly explain the shared experience and that everyone gets a part of the time. And usually the people that want to have fun will understand and learn. I also make sure to share the focus on each player. And that's good if that's the kind of person you're dealing with. Because there are times when you come up to say, hey, you're doing this, and that's kind of not the way we like to do this. We like to do it this way. And they're like, oh, I'm sorry. I mean, I've had that happen numerous times. But there are those people who don't come in and do it with that intention. I think you're absolutely right. Anything else? Are we done? This is a long episode for recent times.
Sorry.
We really brought it.
Like the good old days.
Well,
Nobody has commutes anymore. I don't know how they're going to listen to this.
There are some of the old episodes that I do not remember the end of.
Oh yeah, we
I
did
totally blacked out in.
like 3-hour plus episodes where we started with 2 12-packs of beer with you, me, and Stork. By the time we were done, hey, we need to go do another beer run. All right, I'm gonna call it. Thank you for joining us for season 27, episode 4 of Happy Jacks RPG Podcast. My name is Stu.
This is Stappy.
This is Chris.
This is Mo.
And thank you very much for joining us. We'll see you next week at 7 p.m. Pacific time on Friday and at happyjacks.org/live. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.
From Michigan to Australia and maybe East Timor, be it reds or exile. Hero Pathfinder, fate or savage lands, evil plans will be usurping. Though we could do with less burping, Happy Jacks podcast will be douchebags all.
Why problem make when you no problem have you don't want to make?
The preceding program has been a presentation of the Angry Folk Media Empire.